On today's show, are the Dallas Mavericks seriously considering starting two rookies in Dereck Lively and Olivier-Maxence Prosper next to Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving? And if not starting two rookies, they have a lot of options to choose from. Are the Mavericks now one of the deepest teams in the entire association? Early preseason takeaways and so much more coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, you shouldn't have to worry or stress when you're buying tickets, right? You're trying to go out and have a good time. Nobody wants to worry about the logistics of how you're going to get the tickets, right? That's always just make it easy with Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events happening near you. They've got last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and so many more. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've got views from the seats at the venue so you know exactly the type of bang that you're getting for the buck that you are spending. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and so much more. Game Time is the best way to get tickets for whatever event is happening near you. And you could check them out. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Mavericks and Locked On NBA, Nick Angstadt, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts. And on YouTube, just search Locked On Mavericks. Nick, the Mavs and Timberwolves kind of teeing things off with a pair of the Abu Dhabi preseason games for this NBA season. A couple losses for the Dallas Mavericks. We're going to get into whether or not there should be some warranted or unwarranted overreactions to these preseason games. But I think the biggest storyline here is the Mavs are starting two rookies this season in Dereck Lively and Olivier-Maxence Prosper. Maybe starting them, possibly starting them, not locked in place yet. Maybe I need to backtrack that statement, help rectify the situation here. Looks like they're starting two rookies.
The Dallas Mavericks started two rookies in the first preseason game. And Jason Kidd had put it out there and said, hey, we could start one of these guys. We could start both these guys, and Dereck Lively and Olivier-Maxence Prosper. And he wanted to just do it as a test, see how they looked with the starters, see how they looked with those guys, and just to see how they looked with Luka and Kyrie, and then see how they responded, and then go from there. So I don't think it was ever on the table that both those guys would start and be the starting players at the start of the season. But what has transpired is now Dereck Lively looks pretty good through two games, and he looks really good with Luka, looks good in that role, he looks especially good because he can defend the rim. And that's just something the Mavericks haven't had in a long time, like since maybe old DeAndre Jordan or Tyson Chandler going back to like 2015. So it's been a long time coming for the Mavericks to have a player like this. And so now it looks like Dereck Lively will probably be the starting center for the Dallas Mavericks to start the season. Omax looks like he could use a little bit more time. It's only been two preseason games, but that's where it looks like right now.
Okay, and you mentioned just kind of the chemistry between Lively and Luka specifically. Obviously, that's a nice little lob threat to have for Luka in the pick and roll. What stands out specifically about that duo, though, that has kind of shined through a couple games?
In training camp, Luka is always asked about like other players, and he just doesn't ever say anything. He never really says anything to media anyway. But one thing that he said, and he didn't talk at media day, but he talked at training camp a couple days before. He said, you know, these guys, I've played with them for a little bit. We've played some pickup and things like that. One thing that Lively does is he follows well. And that's so key with Luka. It's like center sets a screen and you just got to follow where he's going. Just read everything he's doing because you just never know. Luka has every option out of a pick and roll to do. And he said that Lively follows well and that he was impressed by that basically. And I thought that was a really key thing. We've seen a couple times already, those guys, and against Rudy Gobert of all players, pull off pick and rolls where Lively gets a dunk, or a pick and roll where Rudy Gobert decides to stick with Lively and Luka gets a layup, something like that. Now, their offense looked real clunky. It didn't look like it was all together, so it wasn't like this free-flowing, great, awesome-looking thing, but we saw some we saw something to build off of. We saw some pick and roll stuff that can actually work. And between Luka and Lively, that seems to be a really good pairing. Lively can catch pretty much anything, and I'm gonna bet once they play against a team that doesn't have Rudy Gobert as the center that's defending those pick and rolls, and Jaden McDaniels guarding Luka, even once they play against a team like that, they're gonna look really, really good in a game, and all of a sudden people are gonna be like, wait, what? Where did this guy come from?
Yeah, if the bar is how good do you look against Rudy Gobert and you can pass on that being the bar, like suddenly it's going to get, it's like, you know, working out with like ankle weights or whatever on, and then you take the ankle weights off and you're like, oh, this is so much easier now. So I'm sure Lively's going to, you know, look great against some of the other competition in the NBA. I know you mentioned Omax kind of maybe, you know, a little bit rougher around the edges there, probably a little bit more to go before being ready for maybe that starting spot. What stood out about his play that kind of makes you think he's maybe not ready for the starting nod yet?
He looked very rushed, and especially in that first game, but even in the second game, just everything he did felt like he was going too fast, felt like he was closing out too hard, felt like everything was just too fast for him. It all needs to slow down for him. He's got the type of game where the Mavericks really need a guy like that too, a big wing that can get to the rim, that can, you know, maybe hit a three here and there. They need somebody like that. But I think with Omax, there are also guys in front of him. Josh Green is going to probably start, and so he's going to play the bulk of the minutes. You've got Grant Williams playing a lot of wing minutes. Maxi Kleber is going to play a lot of minutes at the 4, which is kind of a wing for the Mavericks, and Tim Hardaway as well. Like, they've got enough guys at those spots to play those minutes that I think the minutes are going to probably dry up for Omax unless he takes some steps forward right here. But again, it's only been 2 preseason games. He could come out in the second or in the third and fourth preseason game, maybe the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden look a lot better than he did in these first 2 games. But he just looked really raw. Didn't look like it looked like the speed of the game was just a little bit too much for him to start.
When you say minutes might dry up, so just minutes completely, like not even in the rotation out of the gate, potentially.
Yeah, this Mavs team is like secretly like kind of deep now. They added a bunch of guys. David Locke, our boss, has a thing where he looks up the, you know, who has 240 minutes across their team. So basically, like, if you do 5 positions times 48 minutes, you get 240 minutes. And he started looking at which teams in the West have 240 rotation minutes just by him looking and saying, that player should get this many minutes, that player probably gets this, and like which ones are rotation players.
NBA quality rotation guys. Yeah.
Quality, yeah. And the Mavericks had 240. He was only 4 teams in the West that had 240 minutes. It was the Warriors, the Clippers, the Wolves, who the Mavs just played, and the Mavericks do. Like, you start looking across and like the Mavs, if you go, let's just go 10 deep. Luka, Kyrie, Grant Williams, Josh Green, Tim Hardaway, Maxi Kleber, Dereck Lively, Dwight Powell, Seth Curry, Jaden Hardy. You're leaving off Dante Exum, who looked pretty good and looked good in FIBA this summer. Rashawn Holmes, who looks like he could bounce back and fits perfectly what the Mavs want to do. Derrick Jones Jr., who's been a rotation player in the NBA. And then Omax. Like, this team really has some depth here. It's deep depth. It's not like high-end rotation depth, but they've got a lot of dudes.
And that's exactly the kind of thing that you need to be able to make it through the slog of an 82-game season, right? You've got your star power up at the top with Luka and Kyrie. You need extra bodies, though, to just survive the brutality of an 82-game NBA season. Speaking of that duo, I know we only saw them in the first game, though. How did Luka and Kyrie kind of look playing off of each other?
Looked like they were messing around. I mean,
I'm going to be course in preseason.
I mean, I'm just going to be honest with it. With Luka, I mean, he took a ton of threes. It just felt like he was kind of bailing out, but also just kind of like throwing up threes at times. Didn't look like there wasn't a lot there to look. The Luka and Lively, that combination, that's something I'm really honed in on. Luka and the game, like Luka, how he approached this game is not how I think Luka will approach a game that actually matters. And so there wasn't much there. Kyrie went like 1 of 6. They only played the first half too. Jason Kidd doesn't play the starters past the first half basically. And so we just didn't get to see a lot of those two. And so I'm going to reserve my thoughts for later in the year, I think.
No overreactions from the Luka-Kyrie duo through one half of preseason.
In our YouTube comments, there's those overreactions. So if you're interested in that, go read our YouTube comments for the last couple of days.
There we go. I'm sure there's some high comedy over there. What has been, I know you take it with a grain of salt, it's just 2 preseason games. Biggest surprise 2 preseason games in?
I think my biggest surprise is Lively. I think just him defensively looking as good as he did, altering as many shots as he did. He comes in and exactly what the Mavericks want from him is what he is. A big body that can defend the rim, that can figure out how to defend a pick and roll. And like, there are some high concept things that he was doing where he was hedging and then got back and he blocked a lob from Anthony Edwards to Rudy Gobert. It was a great play that he had in, I think, the second game. There's just some really good plays that he had defending the rim. because I was under the impression that, all right, he may play some G League minutes. Like they may try and really slow roll this with Lively. And like after these first 2 games, I think he's going to be the starter. I think that Jason Kidd is feeling good about him. The thing about him that I didn't say earlier is that Jason Kidd and the Mavs organization asked him and Omax to come back to the Mavericks facility in August. So they've been working in the facility with coaches, trainers, and all that since August. And they said specifically that Lively has taken really big leaps over that time. Like even after summer league, and then, in the Mavs facility, he's taken some really big leaps, and they desperately need him to be good. And I've been surprised that he's actually looked really good.
Man, well, you're going to have us covered for how Dereck Lively and Omax actually progress and look as rookies this NBA season, what the Mavericks' actual lineup is going to look like with so much roster flexibility, who's going to get what roles. You'll have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Mavericks. Nick, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Boom.